Our next speaker is Margaret Elisabeth, who is a non-binary person. They go by they, them. One of the co-chairs of the steering committee of the Green Party of the United States and serves as the co-chair of the National Lavender Green Caucus. They've been involved in green activism for the last 25 years with specific focus upon Leave No Trace campaign festivals and non-monetary barter-based economies with community policing. They created an event with their friends called Playa del Fuego, which means Beach of Fire, based off of the Burning Man ethos of 1998, and it's been going ever since. That's really cool. They voted Green ever since Nader ran and formally joined the National Party in 2016 to help run the Washington State for Jill Stein and Jill Stein Dink meme stash pages on Facebook. They believe that Green Party is the best chance we have of making real sustainable change in the United States, and they're proud to be part of it. Thank you so much for being here, Margaret.
Thanks for having me. Delilah, thank you for moderating this. I really appreciate it. This did expand somewhat from our small gathering, so there's that. I do have a lot to get through, colleagues, and I apologize for kind of being a bit boring at the beginning of the presentation. Hopefully it'll be a bit more engaging as we get through it. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to do is talk to you about how we sort of got to where we are right now in the Green Party with regards to the Georgia Green Party and the National Lavender Green Caucus. This is a bit of a tale, it's a bit of a thing. There is a link to, well, I could post it in the chat or someone could have it be posted, but there is a link to the actual complaint, which is hosted on our website, which you're free to read at your own leisure so you can see the full details of it. And I'm going to touch briefly on the substance of the complaint in the timeline, because I think the timeline is important for understanding why we're here now, and what we've tried to do to not get here now. Okay, so thank you. As you may know, back in 2020, in February, I think it was February 22nd, the Georgia State Green Party had their annual spring meeting, and they passed 2 amendments to their human rights platform, amendment to H.R. 3 and H.R. 4, which are detailed in our complaint. And I'm not going to read the actual amendments to you because they're a bit long. Suffice it to say that those amendments are the meat, the potatoes of this complaint, right? The heart of it, as it were. Okay, so we found out about that on the 22nd. On the 29th of that month, the National Lavender Green Caucus issued our call for justice and reconciliation, asking essentially for Georgia to come and talk to us at the mediation table. We saw these amendments, and those were definitely not going to be things we could be comfortable with, so we wanted to have this conversation. That never happened. On April 16th, the National Lavender Green Caucus and Georgia State Green Party agreed, however, to the dispute resolution process. So GPUS, if you don't know, has a formalized mediation process between facilitated by our Dispute Resolution Committee. So that is the DRC process. It requires both sides to agree to participate before it will happen. So in this case, both sides did. Georgia and Lavender Caucus both agreed to have this dispute resolution. On May 20th, the National Lavender Green Caucus was informed by the DRC co-chair, at that time, and still, I believe, Daryl Moak, that a mediator had been assigned to our dispute. However, we discovered that our mediator was a signature of the Dialogue Not Expulsion group. And so as a consequence, did not contact us. And we complained to the DRC, and we had a new mediator assigned to us. That mediator, whom some of you might know, has been a previous co-chair on the steering committee of the Green Party, is somebody named Jesse Townley. So Jesse was the mediator for this process. Roughly on July 10th or so, the Lavender Green Caucus discovered, and this is pretty shocking, I have to confess that this is a bit of our own dirty laundry, and so hard times here for us, but this is part of what it means to be accountable. and holding toxic personalities accountable in our party. So at that time, we had a co-chair, Kathy Woodward, who had been sharing all of our confidential conversations with Georgia. Georgia had been participating in this process in a not good faith manner. So once we discovered that our conversations were being shared with Georgia and other Green Party members, many of whom were not involved in the dispute whatsoever, some who are not in the Green Party currently, we recalled Kathy. We removed her from all of her positions of authority and suspended her from the caucus. This was a complete violation of our entire process, and every part of the confidential dialogue was compromised. So as a consequence, we contacted Georgia again to continue our mediation and dispute resolution efforts on or about August 11th. So we had talked to Jesse, and we asked, where it was, because it had been a couple of months since we had heard from Georgia. On September 11th, about a month later, our mediator was told by us, the Lavender Green Caucus, that Georgia had 1 month left to respond to us. This would be 2 months now without a response from Georgia. On October the 8th, the mediator informed Georgia that this was their third and final opportunity to respond by the deadline. And on October 11th, the mediator informed the National Lavender Green Caucus that due to a lack of response from Georgia, we are at an impasse. And I'll quote what our mediator had to say about this. Quote, "I think there was room for a resolution, but this process needs a full and consistent participation by all involved. There is no way to move forward if one side of a dispute stops responding. As far as I'm concerned in my role as DRC mediator, this dispute is at an impasse." So that's where we are. That's a technical thing in our party. That means the two sides couldn't come to an agreement. So as a consequence, due to our lack of agreement, the National Lavender Green Caucus filed our complaint with the Accreditation Committee in December of 2020, which is what we're talking about now, which is what's going on at the moment. If you're a member of the Accreditation Committee, you have been privy to all of that discussion, and you've been involved in that now for about 2 months. So we anticipate something from there soon. There's a subcommittee convened now who are writing the current proposal about what's going to happen. Where we are on this timeline is a bit kind of advanced. So that was our complaint, and that was what happened. As this started to unfold, the accreditation committee asked both sides to come in and present evidence to either support our case or, I suppose, make the case against the other side. The National Lavender Caucus responded to that, and we showed up and presented our case. Georgia protested and said that they would not participate. Halfway through it, however, one of their delegates did suggest that Georgia would now participate in the process, but then did not. Their deadline to respond to the AC came and went on, I believe, the 10th, and on Thursday this last week, Georgia contacted the caucus and said that they were going to be doing depositions and things like that, which is fine for them to do, but well outside the AC's investigative process, which is now complete. We are now waiting for that. That's how we got here. Whew, boy, and boy, did it take a while to get here. It's been a very bruising and, I would say to you, soul-challenging a confrontation in many, many ways across the entire Green Party. And it has proven to be, I think, one of those surprising to me issues that is looming large in society. As was already mentioned in the previous presentation, there are more than 100 laws pending right now that target trans people and trans youth in particular. Like it's really specific in particular about who they are going after. So it's bizarre to me to see it happening in a broad sense in our society, except that it's been going on since roughly 2014. There's going to be a conversation we're going to have a little bit later on, I think, where I'm going to try and show you some of the connections between a few of these groups who we're dealing with, and why it's such a significant concern for us here in the Green Party, and how we need to have a very serious mind and very serious approach about how to move forward with these issues. Um, this first part of my presentation was simply that, the history of how we got here, the negotiations. Naturally, this is our side of it. I would expect Georgia would present different information. Hopefully we would agree on the facts of this situation. However, it's actually clear that we do not. As even though our mediator has posted and provided a very clear and concise timeline, Georgia insists that they never stopped communicating, and that they did talk to the mediator, except of course they did not. And so this has continued for month after month after month. We are now in May of 2021. And we are looking at perhaps another 2 months of dealing with this very specific issue. And colleagues, I must confess that when I look around our country and I see the rise of the transmisic behavior, the anti-trans legislation, the way that this issue is being politicized, and the way that these marginalized identities are being weaponized in this context, it's concerning on very, very fundamental levels for me. I believe very strongly in being historically mindful about how the government particularly goes about trying to disrupt leftist organizations and third-party political groups. We are definitely that. If you don't know, we are the largest anti-war party in the United States, and that is a definite threat to the war machine. And so believe that they have a vested interest in trying to disrupt us. This is a wedge issue strategy. There's no way it isn't. I'll share with you all that in 2000, when the Green Party of the United States was formed, right? It was formed as a merger of two different groups in the United States. Our foundational documents in 2000, right? Our foundational platform includes respect and acknowledgement of gender identity and gender expression. That's part of our foundational platform. Here it is now, 17 years later, when this is originally beginning. And now, 21 years later, we're dealing with the full effect of some sort of wedge issue that's been brought to us and trying to split the Green Party. If you are a member of the National Committee, you've seen increasingly emotional and I think in many cases hyperbolic statements about the purging, witch hunts, and all this kind of stuff. None of that is correct. None of that is true. There's a very specific complaint about a very specific group who did a very specific thing. Decentralization in the Green Party is very important. Grassroots democracy is very important. We all have the right of association here. This is what we're talking about. The rest of the Green Parties who belong to the Green Party of the United States do not wish to associate with Georgia Green Party because of their transmisic statements and platform amendments. That's the long and the short of it. Other people have whatever emotions and feelings they have about these issues, and I have my own too. But from our position from the caucus, this is a pretty straightforward thing. They adopted amendments that are clearly against the platform. Now, also, you might know that identity caucuses in the Green Party are formed for a variety of reasons, but primarily to help educate and to promote values that are specific to those communities. Which is why we constitute them. It's why they have place in our party. It's how they help us navigate these spaces. We're not all experts in these fields, nor should we be. This is the value of having identity caucuses, to help us have good policies and good ways to go forward in a polity which is increasingly becoming independent of the major parties and looking for real alternative solutions. And colleagues, if you are anyone under the age of 40 or you know someone under the age of 40, they are strongly supportive of queer rights in every possible aspect. As a co-chair of the steering committee and the co-chair of my caucus, I take a lot of this really, really seriously. And one of my responsibilities is to do for the next 20 years what my predecessors did for the first 20 years, which is to create a viable Green Party that is appealing to the new generation of progressives who are disillusioned with the franchise and are looking for a political home. Given that so many young people are so positive of queer rights and queer positions, we can't afford not to be. So when we have an institutional effort to embody anti-trans behavior and transmisic attitudes into our bylaws and or our platform positions, we have to challenge it. It's our mission. It's what we are constituted to do in the party. That's why we exist here. And so we advocate for policies which are good for us. We advocate against policies which are bad for us. And this is an extraordinarily bad policy. It's bad in so many ways. You might, as in our previous presentation, we talked a little bit about bathroom bills, notorious in many, many ways. But one of the most notorious of all the bathroom bills was the one that came out of North Carolina. But the North Carolina bathroom bill is shockingly somehow less bad than what Georgia is proposing. North Carolina's bathroom bill only applied to federal space that was controlled by the state government. And the Georgia law applies to all space, all public space. So this is what we do, in public, i.e. going to the bathroom, going to places to eat. If you cannot go to the bathroom in public venues, then you really cannot be out in public. And so this is a way of legislating trans people out of existence. And this is something that we have to stand firmly against. There can be no compromise on this issue whatsoever. And so that is the crux of it. That's how we got here. And that is the situation we find ourselves in now. We wait for the accreditation committee to make a proposal. We've presented all the evidence, and Georgia chose to present no evidence. So they have instead organized an international group called the Dialogue Not Expulsion Caucus, which is orchestrating an international campaign to divide the Green Party of the United States. I say this because it's got people from other countries who are sponsoring it and signatories on it, and they are attempting to influence our policies and politics. This is a significant issue, and is part of a coordinated campaign that's also taking place to target the Green Party of England and Wales, a little bit outside of the scope of this conversation, perhaps. However, my point is suggesting to you that this is not an isolated incident, and this specific wedge issue is coming up to target only a few Green parties. And there's a reason for that, and that's also beyond the scope of this conversation. But nevertheless, it is an extraordinary thing which is happening. We are witnessing, I think, the full effects of a and I really hesitate to say this, but I really feel the full effects of a COINTELPRO sort of operation, where the people who are operating this, in some cases, are just regular Greens who've been led astray. But the orchestrators of this are not. That is not what is occurring, and we need to take it seriously and to be of serious mind to address it. I apologize for taking so much time. Wow, that was a bit. So thank you for giving me the space, and I'll turn it back over to our moderators. Thank you.
No need to apologize, Margaret. Thank you so much for the timeline and all of the information. As a fairly new Green member, it feels good to hear everything laid out for everybody to see, and I think that's the best way to move forward. So thank you very much for your time.